There's something strange happening in the modern world. People have more technology, more convenience, more information than ever before. And yet, so many feel exhausted, distracted, lost, unfulfilled. Every morning, millions of people wake up already tired, not because they didn't sleep enough, but because their minds never truly rest. Before their feet even touch the floor, they reach for their phones, notifications, messages, social media, and without realizing it, they hand over control of their attention to the world. Days become routines. Routines become years, and slowly, people stop living intentionally. They begin surviving instead of creating, reacting instead of leading, consuming instead of becoming. And this is the tragedy of modern life. Not that people lack talent, not that they lack intelligence, but that they never fully discover what they are capable of becoming. Because deep inside, every human being carries something extraordinary, a hidden greatness, a rare genius, a powerful version of themselves waiting to awaken. But most people never reach it, not because greatness is impossible, but because distraction is easier than discipline. Comfort becomes addiction, excuses become identity, average becomes normal, and slowly the fire inside them fades. That's why so many people feel empty even after achieving success, because achievement without alignment still feels meaningless. And maybe that's why you're here right now, because a part of you knows you were meant for more. More focus, more peace, more discipline, more purpose, a better life. In the powerful book, The 5 a.m. Club, Robin Sharma shares a philosophy that has transformed entrepreneurs, athletes, artists, leaders, and high performers around the world. But this book isn't really about waking up at 5 a.m. It's about reclaiming control of your life. It's about mastering your mind, protecting your focus, and becoming the strongest version of yourself. Because according to this philosophy, the way you begin your morning shapes the quality of your entire life. And in a world filled with noise, stress, and endless distraction, those quiet, early morning hours may be the last place where greatness can still be built. So in this video, we're going to explore the complete philosophy behind the 5 a.m. Club, the habits, the mindset, the routines, and the life-changing principles that separate world-class performers from the distracted majority. And by the end of this journey, you may never look at your mornings the same way again. Welcome to Beyond the Cover, where powerful books become real transformation. Now, let's begin with the first truth this book reveals. The modern world is quietly destroying human focus. The modern world has become very good at stealing attention. Every app fights for it. Every notification demands it. Every screen profits from it. And most people don't even realize it's happening. We live in a time where silence feels uncomfortable. where being alone with your thoughts feels strange. So people keep consuming more videos, more scrolling, more noise, anything to avoid stillness. But here's the dangerous part. Every distraction takes away a piece of your mental strength. Focus becomes weaker. Patience disappears. Deep thinking fades away. And slowly, people lose the ability to sit quietly and do meaningful work. That's why so many people feel busy but never fulfilled. Their attention is scattered everywhere. And where attention goes, life follows. In the 5 a.m. Club, Robin Sharma describes a world where most people are trapped in distraction, complexity, uncertainty, and endless noise. And honestly, look around. People wake up tired, work without meaning, scroll without awareness, sleep without peace. Modern life has trained people to react constantly. React to messages, react to trends, react to pressure. But very few people still know how to create. And creation requires focus. Great ideas require silence. Mastery requires repetition. Excellence requires depth. But depth is disappearing from modern life. The book introduces a powerful idea that many people today suffer from what the author jokingly calls victimitis, a mindset where people constantly complain, blame circumstances, criticize others, and avoid responsibility. Instead of building their future, they become trapped in excuses. And this mindset spreads quietly through negative media, through toxic comparison, through environments that reward comfort instead of growth. The result? People stop believing in their own potential. They settle for average routines, average thinking, average lives, even though deep inside, they know they're capable of more. And this is why the message of the 5 a.m. Club feels so powerful. Because it's not just about productivity. It's a rebellion against mediocrity. It's about reclaiming your attention before the world steals it permanently. It's about protecting your mind, your energy, your focus, your future. Because once a person loses control of their attention, they slowly lose control of their life. And maybe that's why the book begins not with success, but with broken people. A struggling entrepreneur, an exhausted artist. Two human beings desperate for answers. And their lives are about to change in the most unexpected way possible. Because one day, inside a crowded conference hall, they meet a strange homeless man who seems to understand life better than anyone they've ever known. The story of the 5 a.m. Club does not begin with successful people. It begins with broken ones. An entrepreneur whose business and life are collapsing, and an artist filled with talent but trapped in self-doubt and inconsistency. Both of them arrive at a personal development seminar, hoping to find answers, not motivation, not empty inspiration, real answers. Because sometimes people don't need more information, They need transformation. The entrepreneur especially is carrying invisible pain. From the outside, she looks successful, but internally, her world is falling apart. And that's something modern society rarely talks about. How many people appear strong while silently breaking inside? Money cannot always heal stress. Achievement cannot always heal emptiness. And success without inner peace eventually becomes exhausting. The artist suffers differently. He has creativity, potential, dreams, but he struggles with procrastination, self-sabotage, and inconsistency. And honestly, this makes him relatable to almost everyone, because many people today know they could become extraordinary if only they could defeat their distractions, their fears, and their habits. Then suddenly, something unexpected happens. A strange homeless man enters their lives. At first, he seems completely ordinary. Messy appearance, unusual behavior, strange energy, almost impossible to take seriously. But then he begins speaking, and everything changes. Because hidden behind his strange personality is extraordinary wisdom. He speaks about greatness, discipline, human potential, leadership, focus, legacy. Not like a motivational speaker, but like someone who has deeply understood life. At one point, he explains something profoundly important, that many people spend the first half of their lives trying to gain approval from the world. They chase status, validation, money, recognition, believing those things will finally make them feel complete. But eventually, many people realize something painful. External success cannot fill internal emptiness. And this realization changes everything. People stop asking, "How can I impress the world?" and start asking, "How can I build a meaningful life?" That shift from ego to purpose, from selfishness to service, becomes one of the deepest themes of the entire book. The homeless man continues sharing ideas that feel strange at first, but impossible to ignore. He says something powerful. All change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. And honestly, that one sentence describes transformation perfectly, because growth never feels comfortable in the beginning. Waking up early feels painful. Discipline feels difficult. Focus feels exhausting. But eventually, those small daily struggles create extraordinary lives. The entrepreneur and the artist begin realizing that this strange man might be far more important than he appears, because sometimes the people who change our lives arrive in forms we never expect. And soon, this mysterious homeless man introduces them to a philosophy that will completely transform how they think, how they work, and how they live. A philosophy built around one radical idea. If you want an exceptional life, you must protect the beginning of your day. And according to him, the first hour of the morning holds more power than most people can possibly imagine. Most people think, Their life is shaped by big decisions, huge opportunities, rare moments, massive breakthroughs. But according to the 5 a.m. Club, real transformation happens differently, quietly, daily, repeatedly, and it begins in the first hour of the morning. The mysterious mentor explains something fascinating. The way you start your morning creates the emotional tone, mental clarity, and energy for the rest of your day. Think about most mornings today. People wake up late, already stressed. They immediately check notifications, emails, messages, social media, and within minutes, their brain becomes overloaded. Instead of beginning the day intentionally, they begin reactively. The world enters their mind before they even hear their own thoughts. And slowly, this creates mental chaos. No clarity, no focus, no peace. But early mornings are different, especially the hours before sunrise. The world becomes quieter, distractions disappear, the mind becomes calmer. And in that silence, something powerful becomes possible. Self-reflection, deep thinking, creativity, discipline, the exact qualities needed to build an extraordinary life. The mentor explains that history's greatest performers, artists, leaders, innovators, and elite thinkers, often protected their mornings fiercely, not because waking up early is magical, but because distraction is weakest during those early hours. And honestly, that idea feels even more relevant today because modern life has become a war for human attention. Every company wants your focus. Every platform wants your time. But very few people still protect their inner world. That's why the mentor says something powerful. Own your morning, elevate your life. Not just your productivity, your life. Because when a person wins the morning, they often win the day. And when they consistently win their days, they slowly transform their future. The entrepreneur begins realizing something uncomfortable. Her life was never lacking potential. It was lacking structure. And the artist realizes his creativity was never truly gone. It was buried under distraction and inconsistency. This becomes one of the deepest lessons of the book. Most people are not incapable of greatness. They are simply disconnected from the habits that create greatness. And morning routines are not really about routines. They are about identity. Because every morning you are either becoming stronger or becoming weaker. Every morning you either train focus or train distraction, train discipline or train excuses. And over time, those small daily choices become your destiny. The mentor then reveals that there is a specific formula used inside the 5 a.m. philosophy, a system designed to strengthen the body, the mind, the emotions, and the soul. A simple structure that can completely transform human performance. It's called the 20-20-20 formula, and according to the mentor, this one routine has the power to separate ordinary lives from world-class ones. The mentor explains that most people lose their mornings before their mornings even begin. They wake up distracted, mentally scattered, emotionally reactive, and because of that, their entire day feels chaotic. But elite performers do something differently. They protect the first hour of the day with intention. This is where the mentor introduces the heart of the entire philosophy inside the 5 a.m. Club, the 20-20-20 formula. A simple structure, but beneath its simplicity is a powerful system for mental mastery, energy, focus, and personal transformation. The formula divides the first hour of the morning into 3 powerful blocks. The mentor says the first part of the morning must begin with intense movement, exercise, sweating, physical activation, not casually, seriously. Why? Because movement changes your state. When you exercise intensely in the morning, your body releases chemicals that improve focus, energy, motivation, and emotional strength. Stress hormones begin decreasing, mental fog disappears, the brain wakes up, and suddenly you feel alive. But this section is deeper than fitness. It's about proving something to yourself, that you can do difficult things even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Because every early morning workout sends a message to your mind. I am becoming stronger than my excuses. And honestly, that mindset alone can change a person's life. After movement comes silence, reflection, meditation, journaling, prayer, deep thinking, anything that reconnects you to yourself. Because modern life rarely gives people time to actually hear their own thoughts. Everyone is consuming constantly, but very few people are reflecting. And without reflection, people lose clarity. They begin chasing goals that don't even matter to them. The mentor explains that the quality of your inner world always shapes the quality of your outer world. If your mind is chaotic, your life becomes chaotic. If your mind is focused, your actions become focused. That's why stillness matters, not as luxury, as survival. During these quiet moments, people reconnect with gratitude, purpose, vision, and emotional healing. And honestly, this may be one of the most forgotten skills in modern society, the ability to sit quietly without distraction. The final part of the formula is dedicated to learning, reading books, studying, listening to valuable ideas, feeding the mind with wisdom instead of noise. Because successful people understand something important. Your income can grow only to the level your mindset grows. And every day, most people unconsciously feed their mind with negativity, social media, fear, drama, comparison. But elite performers feed their mind differently, with knowledge, perspective, strategy, philosophy, and slowly their thinking changes, then their decisions change, then their lives change. The mentor explains that self-education is one of the greatest advantages a human being can develop, because the world changes constantly, and those who stop learning slowly stop growing. Now imagine this entire morning routine together: movement, reflection, growth. Body, mind, soul. Not chaos, not distraction, not reaction. Intentional transformation. And suddenly, the entrepreneur and the artist begin understanding something profound. Greatness is not created randomly. It is built by small daily rituals repeated consistently over time. But the mentor warns them about something important. Knowing the routine is not enough, because information alone never changes lives. The real challenge is discipline, showing up every morning, especially on the days you don't feel like it. And according to the mentor, that is exactly where greatness is born. The entrepreneur looks at the mentor and asks a question many people secretly wonder. What if I don't feel motivated? The mentor smiles slightly because he already knows the answer. Most people wait for motivation before they take action. They wait to feel ready. They wait to feel inspired. They wait for the perfect moment. And because of that, they remain stuck for years. But world-class performers think differently. They understand something ordinary people often ignore. Motivation is unreliable. Some mornings you will feel energized. Other mornings you will feel tired, unfocused, uninspired. And if your actions depend on emotions, your progress will always remain inconsistent. That's why the mentor says something powerful. Self-discipline is self-love. At first, that idea sounds strange because discipline is usually seen as punishment. Waking up early feels difficult. Exercise feels uncomfortable. Deep work feels exhausting, so people avoid it. But the mentor explains, discipline is not punishment. It is protection. Protection from distraction, protection from weakness, protection from becoming less than who you could be. Because every time you break a promise to yourself, your self-respect weakens slightly. You say you'll wake up early, but you don't. You say you'll focus, but you scroll instead. You say you'll change, but repeat the same habits. And slowly, people lose trust in themselves. That loss of self-trust is one of the most dangerous things that can happen to a human being. Because once a person stops believing in themselves, they stop aiming high. But discipline rebuilds that trust. Every difficult action completed becomes evidence. I can rely on myself. And honestly, that inner confidence changes everything. The mentor explains that greatness is never built in dramatic moments. It's built quietly, in small daily victories. Waking up when you said you would, finishing work when distractions appear, staying focused when your mind wants escape. Those moments seem small, but they slowly build an extraordinary identity. And this becomes one of the deepest lessons in the 5 a.m. Club. Success is not only about talent, it is about standards. What standards do you hold yourself to when nobody is watching? Because character is revealed in private, not public. The mentor warns them about modern culture, a culture obsessed with comfort. People want quick results without patience, success without sacrifice, transformation without discomfort. But growth has always required friction. Muscles grow through resistance, wisdom grows through struggle, confidence grows through challenge. And maybe that's why most people never become exceptional. Not because greatness is impossible, but because comfort is seductive. The mentor then says one of the most memorable ideas in the book. The soreness of discipline is tiny compared to the pain of regret. And suddenly, everything becomes clear. The pain of waking up early lasts minutes, but the pain of wasted potential can last a lifetime. The artist becomes deeply emotional hearing this because he realizes his greatest enemy was never lack of talent, it was inconsistency. And honestly, that realization applies to almost everyone. Most people already know enough to improve their lives. The real problem is execution. And according to the mentor, execution becomes easier when a person learns to master one thing: focus. Because in a distracted world, the ability to focus deeply has become a superpower. The mentor looks at the entrepreneur and the artist and says something that feels almost uncomfortable. Your attention determines your reality. Whatever controls your focus eventually controls your life. And in today's world, attention has become one of the most valuable resources on earth. Every company wants it. Every app fights for it. Every platform profits from it. And most people surrender it without resistance. The result? Scattered minds, shallow thinking, constant exhaustion. People begin 10 things and finish none. They cannot sit quietly, cannot focus deeply, cannot think clearly. And slowly, their ability to create meaningful work disappears. The mentor explains something powerful. Distraction is the enemy of mastery, because greatness requires depth, and depth can only exist when attention remains uninterrupted. A musician cannot master an instrument through constant distraction. An entrepreneur cannot build a vision while endlessly checking notifications. An artist cannot create brilliance inside mental chaos. Yet modern culture trains people to destroy their own concentration. Short videos, constant alerts, infinite scrolling. Everything conditions the brain to crave stimulation every few seconds, and eventually, stillness begins feeling painful. The mentor calls this a dangerous addiction to distraction, because once a person loses the ability to focus deeply for long periods, their creative potential weakens dramatically. That's why elite performers protect their attention fiercely. They understand something ordinary people ignore. Focus is a competitive advantage. In a distracted world, the person who can concentrate deeply automatically moves ahead. The mentor introduces a powerful concept called the tight bubble of total focus. This means creating periods of complete concentration without interruption. No phone, no multitasking, no unnecessary noise. Just full presence with one meaningful task. And honestly, this sounds simple, but for most people today, it feels almost impossible because distraction has become automatic. People reach for their phones without even thinking, not because they need information, but because they fear emptiness. The mentor explains something deeply important. Your attention steals a piece of your life, not dramatically, quietly, a few minutes here, a few hours there, until years disappear. And that realization hits hard because many people today are not truly living intentionally. They are reacting constantly, reacting to trends, reacting to messages, reacting to other people's priorities while their own dreams remain neglected. The entrepreneur begins to realize her exhaustion was not only from hard work, it was from fractured attention, too many inputs, too much noise, too little stillness. And the artist realizes something painful too. His creativity did not disappear. It was buried under endless distraction. Then the mentor says something unforgettable. Your excuses are seducers. Your fears are liars, and your doubts are thieves. Because distraction often looks harmless, but behind it, dreams slowly die. Books remain unread, ideas remain unfinished, potential remains unexplored. That's why protecting focus is not just about productivity. It's about protecting your future self. The mentor encourages them to create sacred periods each day for deep, uninterrupted work. No distraction, no chaos, just meaningful creation. Because according to him, this is how extraordinary people separate themselves from the crowd, not through luck, not through talent alone, but through disciplined concentration repeated consistently over time. And then the mentor reveals something surprising. Focus alone is not enough, because even high performers eventually burn out if they never learn one essential skill: recovery. Most people today believe that success comes from constantly working harder. More hours, more hustle, more pressure. Sleep less, push more, never stop. And for a while, that lifestyle can look impressive, but eventually something begins to break. Energy disappears, creativity fades, focus weakens, joy vanishes, and the person who once felt ambitious slowly becomes exhausted. The mentor explains something deeply important in the 5 a.m. Club. Elite performance is impossible without recovery. This surprises the entrepreneur and the artist because modern culture glorifies burnout. People brag about being busy, about sleeping less, about sacrificing health for success, as if exhaustion is proof of importance. But the mentor disagrees completely. He explains that the greatest performers in the world understand a hidden truth. Recovery is not weakness. Recovery is strategy. Because human beings are not machines. The mind needs silence. The body needs restoration. The soul needs renewal. Without recovery, performance eventually collapses. The mentor describes something called the twin cycles of elite performance. This idea is simple but powerful. To perform at your highest level, you must alternate between periods of intense focus and periods of deep recovery. That balance is what creates sustainability, not constant pressure. Think about nature itself. There is day and night, activity and rest, winter and spring. Everything powerful in life moves in cycles. But modern society tries to ignore those cycles. People overstimulate constantly. Even during rest, they continue consuming noise, scrolling before sleep, checking notifications endlessly, never truly disconnecting. And because of that, their minds never fully recover. The mentor explains that sleep is one of the most underestimated performance tools in the modern world. During deep sleep, the brain repairs itself, memory strengthens, hormones rebalance, mental clarity returns. But many people destroy their recovery through poor habits, late-night distractions, overworking, constant digital stimulation, and slowly their energy deteriorates. The entrepreneur realizes something painful. She had been trying to build success while completely neglecting herself. And honestly, that reflects modern culture perfectly. People sacrifice health for achievement, then later sacrifice achievement trying to recover their health. The mentor says something powerful. Protect your energy like your life depends on it, because it does. Because energy affects everything. Your focus, your creativity, your emotions, your discipline, your relationships. Without energy, even simple tasks feel heavy. The artist begins understanding something too. Creativity does not grow in exhaustion. It grows in stillness, recovery, mental space. That's why the mentor encourages intentional recovery rituals, walking in nature, reading deeply, silence, reflection, proper sleep, time away from noise, not as luxuries, as necessities. Because according to the mentor, a calm mind creates stronger work than an exhausted one ever could. And suddenly, the philosophy of the 5 a.m. club becomes clearer. This is not a system designed to make people robotic. It is designed to make them whole, mentally strong, physically energized, emotionally grounded, spiritually connected. But then the mentor introduces another life-changing idea, one that explains why some people achieve extraordinary results while others remain busy but stagnant. Because according to him, world-class performers protect one thing above all else: their most valuable work. The mentor looks directly at the entrepreneur and the artist and asks a simple question. What is the work only you can do? The question feels heavier than expected because most people spend years being busy without ever identifying what truly matters most. The mentor explains that every person has work that carries unusual importance, work connected to their talent, their purpose, their highest contribution. But modern life constantly pulls people away from that. Meetings, notifications, small tasks, endless interruptions, and eventually, people become trapped doing shallow work while their greatest potential remains untouched. The mentor says something powerful. Busy is not productive. And honestly, that truth describes modern culture perfectly. People answer emails all day and feel accomplished. They multitask constantly and mistake movement for progress. But deep down, they know they avoided the work that actually mattered. The mentor explains that world-class performers operate differently. They organize their lives around their highest value activities. Not random tasks, not urgent distractions, meaningful work. This is where he introduces one of the book's most practical systems, the 90-90-1 rule. The idea is simple, but incredibly powerful. For the next 90 days, spend the first 90 minutes of your workday focused entirely on one highest value project. No distractions, no multitasking, no interruptions. Just deep, focused creation. The entrepreneur immediately realizes how fragmented her days had become. Her attention was constantly being stolen. And honestly, this happens to almost everyone now. People spend their best mental energy reacting to other people's priorities. The mentor explains something critical. Your creative energy is finite. And if you waste it early in the day on noise and distraction, very little remains from meaningful work. That's why mornings matter so much, because early hours contain your clearest thinking, your strongest focus, your highest mental power. And according to the mentor, those hours should never be wasted on trivial tasks. The artist becomes deeply emotional hearing this, because he realizes his dream was not impossible, it was simply neglected. Too much distraction, too much inconsistency, too much energy spent on things that didn't truly matter. The mentor explains another powerful truth. Every master was once unknown, but what separated them from others was not luck alone. It was sustained focus over long periods of time. Books are written through focused hours. Businesses are built through focused hours. Art is created through focused hours. Mastery grows quietly, not through dramatic moments, but through disciplined concentration, repeated daily. The mentor warns them about one of the biggest modern dangers: constant accessibility. People now feel pressure to always respond, always react, always stay available. And because of that, they rarely protect uninterrupted time anymore. But extraordinary work requires isolation, silence, stillness, distance from noise. That's why the mentor encourages them to create boundaries fiercely, protect mornings, protect focus, protect creative energy. Because once attention becomes fragmented, great work becomes impossible. The entrepreneur begins understanding something profound. Success is not built only through ambition. It is built through protection. Protecting energy, protecting standards, protecting time, protecting focus. And suddenly, the philosophy of the 5 a.m. club feels less like productivity advice and more like a complete system for reclaiming life itself. But then the mentor introduces another deeper truth, a truth many people spend their entire lives avoiding. Because according to him, achievement alone will never make a person truly fulfilled. The entrepreneur listens carefully now because something inside her feels unsettled. She spent years chasing success, working harder, achieving more, trying to prove herself, and yet, despite everything she achieved, she still felt empty. The mentor notices this immediately, and then he says something deeply important. Many people climb mountains only to discover they leaned their ladder against the wrong wall. Silence fills the room, because deep down, almost everyone understands that fear. The fear of spending your entire life chasing something that ultimately does not satisfy the soul. The mentor explains that modern society teaches people to define success externally: money, status, recognition, followers, luxury, and people sacrifice their peace trying to obtain those things. But eventually, many discover a painful truth. Achievement without meaning still feels empty. Because human beings are not fulfilled only by success, they are fulfilled by purpose, by growth, contribution, connection, service. The entrepreneur begins reflecting on her. The entrepreneur listens carefully now because something inside her feels unsettled. She spent years chasing success, working harder, achieving more, trying to prove herself, and yet, despite everything she achieved, she still felt empty. The mentor notices this immediately, and then he says something deeply important. Many people climb mountains only to discover they leaned their ladder against the wrong wall. Silence fills the room, because deep down, almost everyone understands that fear. The fear of spending your entire life chasing something that ultimately does not satisfy the soul. The mentor explains that modern society teaches people to define success externally: money, status, recognition, followers, luxury, and people sacrifice their peace trying to obtain those things. But eventually, many discover a painful truth. Achievement without meaning still feels empty. Because human beings are not fulfilled only by success, they are fulfilled by purpose, by growth, contribution, connection, service. The entrepreneur begins reflecting on her own life. She remembers all the moments where she ignored relationships, health, and inner peace in the pursuit of achievement. And honestly, modern culture rewards that imbalance. People admire busyness, celebrate overwork, glorify constant hustle. But the mentor believes this creates deeply unhappy lives, because when achievement becomes your only identity, you eventually lose yourself. The artist asks quietly, "Then what actually matters?" The mentor smiles gently, and for the first time, his voice softens completely. He explains that a meaningful life is built through balance, not perfect balance every day, but intentional balance over time. Success matters, discipline matters, achievement matters, but so do peace, love, health, stillness, purpose. Because in the end, people rarely regret not working more hours. They regret not truly living, not spending time with people they loved, not protecting their health, not pursuing what deeply mattered. The mentor explains that one of the greatest tragedies in life is becoming successful but spiritually empty. And that is why the philosophy of the 5 a.m. Club is not just about productivity, it is about wholeness. The mentor introduces another important idea: the 4 interior empires. According to him, a truly extraordinary life requires strength in 4 areas: mindset, heart set, health set, soul set. Your psychology, your beliefs, your thinking patterns, because the way you think shapes the way you live. Your emotional life, your relationships, your compassion, your emotional healing, your physical energy, because without health, success becomes difficult to enjoy. Your deeper connection to meaning, purpose, inner peace, spiritual grounding. The mentor explains something powerful. Most people focus on only one empire, usually money or status, while neglecting the others. And eventually, their life becomes imbalanced. That imbalance creates anxiety, burnout, emptiness. But true mastery comes from developing all 4 dimensions together. The entrepreneur begins realizing that she had built external success while neglecting her inner world. And the artist realizes something too. His creativity was deeply connected to emotional and spiritual health. Then the mentor says something unforgettable. Your life gets really good when you stop focusing only on making a living and begin focusing on building a life. And honestly, that may be one of the deepest messages in the entire book. Because the goal is not simply to wake up at 5 a.m. The goal is to awaken yourself, to become fully alive, fully present, fully intentional. And according to the mentor, that transformation begins the moment a person decides, "I refuse to live unconsciously anymore." There comes a moment in every human life when something inside begins to awaken, a quiet realization that life is moving fast, Days become weeks. Weeks become years. And suddenly, people look back wondering, where did all the time go? The mentor explains that most people are not truly living consciously. They are operating on autopilot, repeating the same habits, the same thoughts, the same routines, day after day, year after year. Wake up, rush through the day, get distracted, feel exhausted, sleep, repeat. And eventually, life becomes mechanical. The entrepreneur feels emotional hearing this because deep down, she knows that's exactly what happened to her. At some point, she stopped living intentionally. She became reactive. And honestly, modern life encourages this unconscious living. Everything moves fast, everything demands attention, and people become so distracted they rarely stop to ask, am I becoming the person I truly want to become? The mentor explains that awareness changes everything, because once a person becomes conscious, they begin noticing their patterns, the distractions, the excuses, the habits destroying their peace, and that awareness becomes the beginning of transformation. He says something powerful. Change is hardest at the beginning, messiest in the middle, and most beautiful at the end. Because awakening is uncomfortable, it forces people to confront truths they spent years avoiding. The truth that they've been wasting time, the truth that fear controlled many decisions, the truth that distraction stole their focus. But according to the mentor, this discomfort is necessary because no person transforms while remaining completely comfortable. The artist asks quietly, but what if it's too late? And for a moment, the mentor becomes completely silent. Then he answers softly, it's almost never too late to become who you were meant to be. That sentence changes something inside both of them because hope begins returning. The mentor explains that human beings possess extraordinary adaptability. New habits can be built, new identities can emerge, new futures can be created. But only if a person becomes intentional, only if they stop drifting through life unconsciously. That's why the morning matters so deeply in the philosophy of the 5 a.m. Club, because mornings create awareness. In the early hours, before the world becomes noisy, people finally hear themselves clearly. They reconnect with values, purpose, vision, inner truth. And slowly, their identity begins changing. The mentor explains that identity is the foundation of behavior. People do not rise consistently above the way they see themselves. If a person sees themselves as weak, their actions reflect weakness. If they see themselves as disciplined, their actions slowly align with discipline. That's why small daily habits matter so much, because habits are not only actions, they are votes for the person you are becoming. Every early morning wake-up says, I am becoming focused. Every workout says, I am becoming stronger. Every distraction resisted says, I am reclaiming control of my life. And eventually, those small repeated actions rewrite identity itself. The entrepreneur begins realizing something profound. Transformation is not one giant moment. It is 1,000 small decisions made consistently over time. And honestly, that truth is both humbling and empowering, because it means greatness is not reserved for a lucky few. It is available to anyone willing to live intentionally. But then, the mentor reveals another uncomfortable truth. One of the biggest reasons people never transform has nothing to do with talent or intelligence. It has to do with fear. The room becomes quiet again, and this time, the silence feels heavier, because the mentor is about to speak about something every human being struggles with: fear. Not always obvious fear, not dramatic fear, but subtle fear. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of judgment, the fear of being misunderstood, and perhaps the deepest fear of all, the fear of discovering what you are truly capable of. The artist lowers his eyes slightly, because this truth hits him deeply. For years, he blamed distraction for his inconsistency, but now he realizes something painful. Part of him was afraid to fully try, because if he truly gave everything and still failed, he would have no excuses left. And honestly, many people live this way. They hold themselves back intentionally. They procrastinate, delay action, stay distracted, not because they are incapable, but because fear makes hesitation feel safer than risk. The mentor explains that fear rarely appears loudly. It whispers. Maybe later. You're not ready. What if people judge you? What if you fail? And over time, those whispers become internal walls. Dreams remain unstarted. Ideas remain hidden. Potential remains unexplored. The mentor says something powerful. Everything you want sits on the other side of discomfort, because growth always requires entering uncertainty. No person becomes extraordinary while staying emotionally safe all the time. The entrepreneur reflects on her life. So many of her decisions were shaped by fear of losing approval. Fear made her overwork, overprove herself, chase validation endlessly, and eventually she lost connection with herself. The mentor explains that fear has one ultimate goal: to keep people small. Small dreams, small risks, small lives. because fear prefers familiarity, even when familiarity creates unhappiness. That's why people stay in toxic routines, stay in unhealthy environments, stay in lives they've already outgrown. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because uncertainty feels terrifying. The mentor then says something unforgettable. The fears you don't face become your limits. And suddenly, everything becomes clearer. Fear avoided today becomes regret tomorrow. The artist begins realizing something transformative. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is movement despite fear. Waking up early despite resistance, creating despite self-doubt, taking action despite uncertainty. That is how identity changes, not through comfort, through courageous repetition. The mentor explains that world-class performers feel fear too. The difference is they refuse to let fear become authority. They act anyway. And through action, fear slowly loses power. This becomes another core lesson of the 5 a.m. Club. Action creates clarity. Most people wait for confidence before starting, but confidence often appears after action begins. The mentor encourages them to stop worshiping comfort, because comfort may feel peaceful temporarily, but over time, it quietly destroys potential. And honestly, that may be one of the greatest tragedies in human life. Not failure, but unrealized greatness. A powerful mind never fully used, a beautiful dream never pursued, a meaningful life never fully lived. The mentor looks at both of them carefully and says softly, "You were built for far more than survival." And in that moment, something begins changing inside them. Not instantly, not dramatically, but deeply. Because for the first time in a long time, they begin believing that transformation might actually be possible. But according to the mentor, belief alone is never enough. Because if a person truly wants to become world-class, they must learn one final discipline: protecting their inner world from the negativity of the outer world. The mentor slowly walks toward the window. Outside, the world continues moving endlessly. Noise, pressure, competition, chaos. And after a long silence, he says something deeply important. Your outer world reflects your inner world. Most people spend their lives trying to control external circumstances. More money, more status, more possessions, believing those things will finally create peace. But according to the mentor, peace does not begin outside. It begins within. Because a chaotic mind will eventually create a chaotic life. The entrepreneur understands this immediately. Her external success looked impressive, but internally, she was exhausted. Overthinking constantly, worrying constantly, reacting constantly, and eventually her inner instability began affecting every part of her life. The mentor explains that modern society constantly attacks the inner world. Negative news, social comparison, fear-based media, digital overload. People absorb emotional poison every day without even noticing it. And slowly, their thinking changes. Hope weakens. Attention weakens. Creativity weakens. That's why the mentor believes protecting the mind is now a form of survival. He explains something powerful. What you allow into your mind eventually shapes your identity. If a person constantly consumes negativity, fear becomes stronger. If they constantly consume distraction, focus becomes weaker. If they constantly compare themselves to others, self-worth begins collapsing. The artist reflects on this deeply. So much of his insecurity came from comparison. Watching others succeed, watching others move faster, watching other people's highlight reels while quietly doubting himself. And honestly, social media has amplified this pain dramatically. People compare their real lives to carefully edited illusions. The mentor explains that comparison destroys peace because it disconnects people from their own journey. And once a person loses connection with their own path, they begin chasing lives that were never truly meant for them. That's why solitude matters so much in the philosophy of the 5 a.m. Club, because silence reconnects people with themselves. In stillness, clarity returns. Purpose becomes visible again. The mentor encourages them to build protective rituals, morning reflection, reading powerful books, exercise, nature, journaling, quiet thinking, small daily habits that strengthen the inner world. Because eventually, life tests everyone. Stress arrives, loss arrives, failure arrives, and in those moments, external success means very little if the inner world is fragile. The mentor then says something unforgettable. The strongest people are not always the loudest. They are the most internally disciplined. Because true strength is invisible. The ability to stay calm during chaos, focused during distraction, hopeful during difficulty. That kind of strength cannot be purchased. It must be built daily. The entrepreneur begins realizing that her mornings were not only improving productivity, they were rebuilding her emotional stability. And the artist realizes something too. Creativity flourishes in protected mental space, not inside constant noise, not inside endless comparison, but inside clarity, stillness, presence. The mentor explains that extraordinary people become extremely selective about what enters their mind. because they understand something most people ignore. Attention is sacred, and whatever repeatedly captures attention eventually shapes destiny. The mentor looks at both of them carefully and says softly, "Protect your peace fiercely. The world will try to steal it every day." And suddenly, the philosophy of the 5 a.m. club no longer feels like a routine. It feels like a defense system against a distracted and unconscious world. But then the mentor reveals one final truth, a truth that changes how they see time itself. Because according to him, life becomes extraordinary the moment a person truly understands that their time is limited. The mentor becomes silent again, this time longer than before. And then he says quietly, "One day your life will end." The words feel heavy, almost uncomfortable, because most people avoid thinking about time, avoid thinking about mortality, avoid thinking about how quickly life disappears. But according to the mentor, understanding death is what teaches people how to truly live. The entrepreneur feels a strange emotion rising inside her, because for years she lived as if time were unlimited, always postponing rest, postponing joy, postponing presence, telling herself one day things will slow down. But deep down, she knows something painful. Life never truly slows down on its own. The mentor explains that human beings live with a dangerous illusion. We think we have more time than we actually do. So people delay what matters most. They delay dreams, delay healing, delay meaningful conversations, delay becoming who they truly want to become. And suddenly, years disappear. The artist looks overwhelmed now because he realizes he spent so much time preparing to live instead of actually living. Preparing to create someday, preparing to take risks someday, preparing to become disciplined someday. But someday kept moving further away. The mentor explains something deeply important. The cost of distraction is your destiny. Every wasted morning, every unconscious habit, every distracted year slowly shapes the life a person ends up living. And honestly, that realization is terrifying, but also liberating. Because once people understand time is precious, they stop treating life casually. They begin protecting their mornings, protecting their energy, protecting their focus, because they realize life is not infinite. The mentor says something unforgettable. Days are expensive. When you spend a day, you have one less day to spend. And suddenly, the entire philosophy of the 5 a.m. club feels different. Not extreme, not obsessive, intentional. Because waking up early is not about punishment, it's about refusing to waste life, refusing to sleep through potential, refusing to drift unconsciously, refusing to settle for mediocrity. The entrepreneur begins realizing something profound. Success without presence is not success at all. And the artist realizes, too, that waiting for the perfect moment was quietly destroying his future. The mentor explains that extraordinary people treat mornings differently because mornings are symbolic. Each sunrise represents another chance, another opportunity to rebuild identity, to strengthen discipline, to move closer to purpose. And according to him, the mentor becomes silent again. This time, longer than before. And then he says quietly, "One day, your life will end." The words feel heavy, almost uncomfortable, because most people avoid thinking about time, avoid thinking about mortality, avoid thinking about how quickly life disappears. But according to the mentor, understanding death is what teaches people how to truly live. The entrepreneur feels a strange emotion rising inside her, because for years she lived as if time were unlimited, always postponing rest, postponing joy, postponing presence, telling herself one day things will slow down. But deep down, she knows something painful. Life never truly slows down on its own. The mentor explains that human beings live with a dangerous illusion. We think we have more time than we actually do. So people delay what matters most. They delay dreams, delay healing, delay meaningful conversations, delay becoming who they truly want to become. And suddenly, years disappear. The artist looks overwhelmed now because he realizes he spent so much time preparing to live instead of actually living. Preparing to create someday, preparing to take risks someday, preparing to become disciplined someday. But someday kept moving further away. The mentor explains something deeply important. The cost of distraction is your destiny. Every wasted morning, every unconscious habit, every distracted year slowly shapes the life a person ends up living. And honestly, that realization is terrifying, but also liberating. Because once people understand time is precious, they stop treating life casually. They begin protecting their mornings, protecting their energy, protecting their focus, because they realize life is not infinite. The mentor says something unforgettable. Days are expensive. When you spend a day, you have one less day to spend. And suddenly, the entire philosophy of the 5 a.m. Club feels different, not extreme, not obsessive, intentional. Because waking up early is not about punishment, it's about refusing to waste life, refusing to sleep through potential, refusing to drift unconsciously, refusing to settle for mediocrity. The entrepreneur begins realizing something profound. Success without presence is not success at all. And the artist realizes, too, that waiting for the perfect moment was quietly destroying his future. The mentor explains that extraordinary people treat mornings differently because mornings are symbolic. Each sunrise represents another chance, another opportunity to rebuild identity, to strengthen discipline, to move closer to purpose. And according to him, the tragedy is not that life is difficult. The tragedy is that many people never fully awaken before life ends, never discovering their true strength, never expressing their gifts fully, never becoming who they could have become. The room falls silent again, and for the first time, both the entrepreneur and the artist understand something clearly. Their mornings were never just mornings. They were training grounds for the rest of life. Every early wake-up built discipline, every focused hour built mastery, every intentional morning built character. And slowly, those invisible daily victories created extraordinary human beings. The mentor smiles gently now, because he knows something important has changed inside them. They no longer want temporary motivation, they want transformation. And according to the mentor, real transformation always begins the same way, one disciplined morning at a time. But before the journey ends, the mentor leaves them with one final lesson. Not about productivity, not about success, but about legacy. Because in the end, the most meaningful question is not what did you achieve, but who did you become? The night feels quieter now. The entrepreneur and the artist sit in complete silence, absorbing everything they've heard. And then the mentor asks them one final question. When your life ends, what will remain? Not your money, not your followers, not your status, but your impact. The way you treated people, the courage you showed, the lives you changed, the example you became. The mentor explains something deeply important. Success fades, legacy remains. Most people spend their lives trying to impress strangers, trying to look successful, look important, look valuable. But very few people ask themselves, am I becoming someone I can truly respect? And honestly, that may be the most important question of all. Because external success can disappear overnight. Money changes, fame changes, circumstances change, but character stays with a person forever. The entrepreneur reflects deeply now. For years, she believed achievement would finally bring peace, but now she understands something different. Peace comes from alignment, living according to values, keeping promises to yourself, building a life that reflects your deeper truth. The artist realizes something too. His dream was never only about creating art. It was about expressing who he truly was. The mentor explains that every human being leaves a legacy, whether intentionally or unintentionally, through habits, through energy, through actions repeated daily. Because people are always teaching others through the way they live. The mentor says something powerful. The way you live your days becomes the way you live your life. And suddenly, the entire philosophy of the 5 a.m. Club comes together beautifully. The early mornings, the discipline, the focus, the reflection, the growth. None of it was only about productivity. It was about becoming calmer, stronger, wiser, more intentional, more alive. The mentor explains that greatness is not a single achievement. Greatness is a way of living, a commitment to continuous growth, continuous awareness, continuous contribution. And according to him, this is what separates truly fulfilled people from people who merely appear successful. Fulfilled people live consciously. They protect their mornings, protect their peace, protect their values, and slowly they create lives filled with meaning instead of noise. The mentor looks at both of them carefully now, and for the first time, his voice becomes deeply emotional. He explains that every human life contains hidden greatness, but hidden greatness only awakens through disciplined daily action, not through wishing, not through waiting, not through motivation alone, but through repeated choices, choosing focus over distraction, choosing growth over comfort, choosing purpose over ego. And eventually, those small choices transform identity itself. The entrepreneur now understands something she never understood before. The goal was never simply to become successful. The goal was to become whole. And the artist realizes, too, that discipline was never the enemy of creativity. It was the path to unlocking it. The mentor smiles gently because he knows the transformation has already begun, not perfectly, not instantly, but permanently. And before leaving, he shares one final message, a message that feels less like advice and more like a challenge to humanity itself. Own your morning. Elevate your life. Because the way a person begins the day eventually shapes the way they experience life. And maybe that is the true meaning behind the 5 a.m. club. Not simply waking up early for the sake of waking up early, but awakening to the life you are truly capable of living, a life of focus, purpose, discipline, peace, contribution, a life where you stop surviving unconsciously and finally begin living intentionally. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all is that transformation does not begin someday. It begins tomorrow morning. So what is the real message behind the 5 a.m. club? Is it simply waking up early? No. This book is really about reclaiming control of your mind, your habits, your focus, and ultimately your life. It teaches that greatness is not built in dramatic moments. It is built quietly, through small daily actions repeated consistently over time. Every early morning becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. The book teaches us that distraction is dangerous, comfort is addictive, and unconscious living slowly destroys human potential. But it also teaches something hopeful, that transformation is possible for anyone who becomes intentional, not through motivation alone, but through discipline, reflection, focus, recovery, and continuous growth. The 20-20-20 formula teaches us to strengthen the body through movement, the mind through reflection, and the future through learning. The philosophy reminds us that success without peace still feels empty. That achievement without purpose still leaves people unfulfilled. And perhaps the deepest lesson of all is this: the quality of your mornings eventually shape the quality of your life. Because mornings are more than routines. They are moments of identity creation. Moments where discipline becomes stronger than excuses, where focus becomes stronger than distraction, where purpose becomes stronger than fear. And over time, those small, invisible victories create extraordinary human beings. That is the true meaning of the 5 a.m. Club. Not simply waking up early, but awakening to your highest potential. This was the 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. Welcome to Beyond the Cover. And until next time, protect your focus, protect your peace, and protect your potential.